Zoophobia are the extreme fear of animals, where usually people who have zoophobia are afraid of specific animals, and this may include spiders, bees, dogs, insects, fish, mice and rats, birds and snakes, lions, blah blah. And the majority of these guys are usually dangerous animals, but you can counter most of them with fleas. Among all of them, Ophidophobia, or fear of snakes, and Arachnophobia, fear of spiders, are an instinctive fear in humans, and many humans are born with this phobia. Well, many scientists point out that the reason behind this might be because back in the past, our ancestors tend to look out for these animals because snakes and spiders can give them a deadly dose of poison in a matter of time if you try to high-five them. So this trait is basically passed down to their descendants to protect their lives. Well, Acrophobia are the fear of extreme height. Well, because falling is the #1 way to stop being a biological entity. And about 2 to 5% of the entire population has acrophobia, with twice as many women affected as men. And this phobia can trigger everywhere, when you stand on a chair, a stool, a ladder, or a mountain cliff. Well, believe it or not, unlike other phobias, when the more you're getting a bill spited, the more scared you are. People who have acrophobia tend to lack traumatic experiences. Well, to address this problem, a group of researchers conduct an experiment with 1,000 participants. The result showed that participants with less fear of heights have more injuries of falling. And fear of heights may be acquired when infants learn to crawl. If they fell, they will learn the concepts about the surface, posture, balance, and movement. Well, in other words, acrophobia could be associated with a lack of exposure to heights in their early life. Aerophobia, or fear of planes, where back in the days, one of my worst moments in life is when the pilot announced that we are going to a turbulence. I've thought 1,000 of times that the plane gonna crash, where actually there's a 1 in a million chances a plane would crash, but that's basically a lottery. And did you know that the plane can still function if one engine explodes, but not 2 engines? People who have aerophobia doesn't actually scare off the plane at all, but this phobia is rather a mix of other phobias like acrophobia, the fear of heights, claustrophobia, fear of tight spaces, or agoraphobia, fear of open spaces. And as a fun fact, Megan Fox, Jennifer Lawrence, and DJ Khaled also has this fear too, so you're not alone. Claustrophobia, or fear of tight spaces. While most people who have claustrophobia are fear of suffocation, as being enclosed in a small area can trigger fear of not being able to breathe properly. And claustrophobia can literally be everywhere. In small rooms, cars, buses, airplanes, underwater caves, and even MRI scanning can trigger this phobia. A lot of people with claustrophobia can trace it back to one funny moment when an older sibling locked them in a laundry basket or a dark closet. To the sibling, it was a prank, while to your developing brains, it was a preview of being buried alive. Now, you can't get into an elevator without your heart beating like crazy. Trypophobia, or fear of repetitive holes. Now, not this hole. To be more specific, trypophobia is not like a fear, but it's like a biological disgust, as holes on humans might relate it to disease, insect bites, wounds, or infections, and all of these are equal to death, so our human brains just basically tell us to back away if we don't want to be put in a coffin. And one of the online sources recorded that 16% of the entire population have this kind of phobia, but many of them don't know that they're having it because trypophobia is pretty unpopular. As a fun fact, a bunch of people claim the new design of iPhone 11 released in 2019 triggered their trypophobia. Claustrophobia, or the fear of deep water. While the cause of this are not clear, but the fear of deep bodies of water is partly an evolutionary response, as our ancestors know that we're not aquatic animals, so they trigger this fear every time to ensure their survival. Plus, Thalassophobia is also a primal fear, considering our humans are land mammals, and we mainly use our eyesight to collect foods. So we all have this fear of darkness, of emptiness, and the unknown because we can't protect ourselves with our eyes closed. Now imagine the water is like a black hole, and boom, a big ass shark appear in front of your eyes. Well, a lot of people with this phobia are also terrified of man-made objects underwater. Think of a sunken ship, a plane wrecked, or even a giant drain pipe. Seeing a rusty, massive thing sitting in the silent darkness of the ocean is enough to make anyone's heart skip a beat. Honestly, I almost shit myself when I saw these creepy pictures. Trypanophobia, or fear of needles, but it is estimated that at least 10% of American adults experience some level of fear of needles, and it's likely that the actual number is larger because these adults tend to avoid our medical treatments. And believe it or not, this is one of the phobia that actually kill people. In case of severe phobia, the drop in blood pressure may cause death. In Hamilton's 1995 review article on needle phobia, it was documented that vasovagal shock during a needle procedure resulted in the death of 23 people. And according to some researchers, trypanophobia is caused by evolutionary survival instincts to avoid wounds, childhood medical trauma, or a genetic vasovagal response that triggers fainting to play dead during injury. Thanatophobia, or the fear of death. Over 3 to 10% of humans have this fear, and it's not just some kind of normal fear, but extreme fear of death. Like they fear that if they eat too much, they might die. If they shower, they might receive a stroke and die. Or if they sleep, they also die too. It seems like women have more of this fear because men are too busy doing these stuff. Mysophobia, or better known as the fear of germs. These are the people who think that the 5 seconds rule is a scam, and they may have some symptoms like excessive hand washing, a fear of physical contact even with a loved one. They may take several showers daily, sanitizing one's hands after any contact with an unknown face. It could look like some kind of 19th century novel. And the last one, glossophobia, or the fear of public speaking. When it comes to phobias, glossophobia might be the king of phobias because 75% of the whole population experience some kinds of public speaking issues. One explanation for this is that this phobia typically stems from social anxieties, past traumas like childhood embarrassment, fear of judgment, or even evolutionary instincts where being watched feels like you're being hunted by a predator. And for some of us, glossophobia starts small. It's the fear of calling for the pizza place. You rehearse your order for 20 minutes. You write down large pepperoni please on a sticky note like it's a script for an Oscar-winning movie. And the guy said, hello. And you immediately hang up and eat cereal instead because the shame is too much to handle.
Wow!